So this is lesson 8.3. Sorry, that doesn't look like an 8. In Intermediate Algebra, Introduction to Functions. Alright, well, you know, when I was taking math back in high school, they introduced functions to me, and I had absolutely no idea what in the world they meant by functions, domains, ranges, and all of that, the way they taught me. And the book seems to be teaching it the same way I was taught, which means that I would have been lost if I were you. So, maybe you're smarter than me and would get what the section discussed, but let's assume that you struggle just like I did with functions, and so I'm going to kind of go about it a different way. I have what is called a function box, and let's see, I've got an opening, and then I've got an opening over here. Alright, so there's my function box. So the way the function box works is you put things in and it spits things out. Alright, so let's say that I have a list of numbers up here. 3, 4, and 5. Those are the numbers that I'm going to put in my function box, and they're going to spit out some numbers. Okay, so let's say that my function is x plus 5. Alright, so whenever I put one of these numbers in my function box, it's going to go in place of the x. So what I'm going to do is I will be adding 5 to each of the numbers, and then it will spit out an answer. So I'm going to put the 3 in there, and when I add 3 to 5, I get 8. When I put a 4 in there and I add 5, I get a 9. When I put 5 in there and add 5, I get 10. So these are the numbers that I put in. This is what happens to the numbers. And these are the numbers that I get when I get out. Alright, so these numbers here are called the domain. The domain is all of the possible answers that I'm going to put into the function box. The numbers that come out are called the range. Those are the answers when I put numbers into the function box. Those are all of the possible answers. And this here is the function. Okay, it's what's done to the numbers that I plug into the function box. Alright, so those are my 3 bits of vocabulary. So let's go ahead and instead of using x plus 5, I need to get myself a smaller pen. Let's put in 3x plus 2 equals y. Same thing happens. I put the domain basically means the x value. What numbers you're going to put in there for the x value. When I put 3 in there, I have 3 times my x value of 3 plus 2 equals y. So what answer do I get? I get 11. So let's go ahead and erase these since we have a new function, and I get 11 when I put 3 in. When I put 4 in, I get 12 plus 2, I get 14. When I put 5 in, I get 17. Alright, so notice how my range changed. My range depends on what my domain is and on what my function is. Okay? So those are the only answers I'm going to get when I put 3, 4, and 5 in the machine. And notice, the x is the domain. It's the number that I put in here for x. 3 in for x, 4 in for x, 5 in for x. And notice what I get. I get a y. That means each of these numbers are my y values. So when I put a 3 in, I get an 11. When I put a 4 in, I get a 14. And when I put a 5 in, I get a 17. Okay, now notice this up here. Each of these numbers corresponds to one value here. When I put a 3 in, I get an 11. When I put a 4 in, I get a 14. When I put a 5 in, I get a 17. Okay, so 3 corresponds to 11, 4 to 14, 5 to 17. Okay, that means that that is a function because each of my x values corresponds to one y value. Okay? Now if I put in a 3 and it gave me 11, and then I put in a 3 again and it gave me a 6, then I would have a problem because I put a 3 in and I get an 11 and a 6 for an answer. That would not be a function. That is not possible in the function machine because you can't put a 3 in here and get 2 answers. Okay? So a function means you put one number in and it spits out one number. Not 2 numbers. You know, you're not getting 2, 3, 4 different answers here. You're only getting one answer for each x value that you plug in. Now, it could be that I put in a 3 and I get an 11. Could be that I put in a 4 and I also get an 11. That's okay if these numbers are the same. As long as when I put a 3, I only get one y value. It doesn't matter if when I put a 4 in, the y value I get is the same number. It doesn't matter at all. It just matters that when I put one number in, I get one number out. Doesn't matter what that number is. Alright, so that is the way functions made sense to me, and hopefully they'll make sense to you. So one thing to understand, the domain is all of the possible x values that you're going to put in, and the range is the y value or the answer you're going to get when you put in x values. So when I put in x values here, I'm going to get numbers out, 11, 14, 17. This is my range. These are the possible answers that I'm going to get when I put in those 3 numbers. Alright, so your function is basically your equation. So when I'm talking about functions, we're looking at the equation that we're going to put in an x and we're going to put in a y. Okay, so that takes us all the way, well, basically all the way through the lesson. I didn't even realize. Now, let's look at graphs for just a minute. I explained how to find out if you have a function. And I will continue on with this with 8.3b as in boy. So if anything weird happens in 8.3b, it's because I messed up. So anyway, just forgive me, and I may ramble on like I am now for a few seconds, and then we'll get into the b part of it. And that's it for 8.3a.